is a new film based on a 2002 novel by Michael Punke. It explores the brutal existence of fur trappers working on the Missouri River during the 1820s. Leonardo DiCaprio plays Hugh Glass, a legendary frontiersman who suffered a bear attack, was left for dead by his companions, and crawled 200 miles to safety. Here's a look at the trailer for The Revenant. Joining me now is the film's director, Alejandro Iñaritu. He won 3 Academy Awards in 2015 for the film Birdman, and his star, 5 times Academy Award nominee Leonardo DiCaprio. Variety describes his performance as a ferocious 200% commitment. More about that later. I am pleased to have both of them at this table at this time. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much for having us.
Here's what this is. I love this quote. So this is you in the Hollywood Review. With Leo, I said, I would love to see you fragile, vulnerable, to see the man that can be broken. And he was very excited by that. True? Is that how you described
Well, you know,
Hugh Glass for you?
Well, Hugh Glass was an interesting story for all of us. It's sort of a campfire legend that represents the iconic American frontiersman and man's struggle against nature, and I think his ability to also conquer nature as well. So it's been told from generation to generation, but it's a very interesting time period. First off, you have this Oregon Territory, which was very much like the Amazon, and you had the first sort of capitalistic move out west to extract the natural resources, and you have the clash of the indigenous populations with French and English fur trappers. And here's this man that's, you know, mauled by a bear, left for dead, buried alive, and has to summon something within his will to persevere and move on. And revenge is the thing that sort of fuels him from the onset. But we knew that we wanted to make a movie where we submerged ourselves in these actual elements, and we wanted to see what sort of poetry came about, what sort of questions that arose in us as filmmakers. And so that's what we did. And that, I said this before, but Alejandro almost had a tough time explaining to me why exactly he wanted to go on this mecca, so to speak, but I just saw something in his eyes. He wanted to submerge himself in these environments and see what came out. And so it was almost like a large portion of our lives together in nature, asking ourselves these questions.
Here's what you said. I decided to embark on what I would characterize as more of a chapter of my life than a film commitment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was that for a lot of us. Absolutely.
The chapter of your life.
Yeah.
I mean, did you come out of this experience, you know, with a different sense of how you and what was important?
Yeah, I mean, we looked at this, all the actors involved. I mean, we were there for 9 months, 0 temperatures in Calgary, real locations, far-off locations. We looked at this as a grand sort of artistic experiment. We've never been a part of something like this. We rehearsed meticulously all day long with Chivo and Alejandro to pull off some very crucial and hard-to-do shots, and then we'd have an hour and a half of natural light, and it became like live theater at the end of the day, this frenetic pace, this intensity that we needed to, you know, keep up with. But more so than that, was for all of us, it was just about allowing ourselves to put our trust in somebody else's unique process. And that's what this was for us as actors, because a lot of this was thought about beforehand in great detail, but we needed to give ourselves over completely to something entirely new. And, you know, it created a great camaraderie between the entire cast and crew and director.
But also the most demanding and toughest experience you've had as an actor?
Well,
by nature
by nature of doing a movie, yeah, this was certainly the toughest film I've ever been a part of.
This had been around for a while, hadn't it?
Yes, I read the first draft written by Mark Smith 5 years ago. And I was really, you know, intrigued by the story of this man, who actually was a factual, real story about this character that 200 years ago almost was attacked by a bear, and then in the full winter he can survive 200 miles to find revenge. And I thought, what this guy has in mind, what happened this guy's life, because anything that is known of Hugh Glass before and after is pure legend. So that there is no actually...
no one could have done what he did.
No one was writing a story in that time. These men were alone by themselves in these very, very difficult times. And it was an unknown, uncharted territory. So, what I loved was that this fact of being attacked by a bear and then survive is so improbable that it requires a willing suspension of disbelief, right? Which is basically the foundation of the cinematic faith, as Coleridge said, of poetry. And I said, you need to suspend the disbelief to make this. You need to stop judgment or prejudice to believe that a man can do that. And to attempt that in a cinematic experience is what really art is about, to make probable the improbable, and those elements were there silently to then put some ideas there.
How long cinematically does the scene of the bear attacking?
How many weeks?
No, first of all, how many minutes does it last in the film?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. And how long did it take you to shoot that?
Well, it was a lot of research of the bear scene. You're saying, well, it is one of those events that nobody would like to see in the real life. But to understand how it happened, you have to see it in real time, not in a chopped cinematic thing. Even when people say why,
not with editing. This is almost like the Birdman kind of shooting.
Yes. Many things that I learned from Bergman I apply here, because I thought that to be in the point of view of Hugh Glass, of Leo's character, will be the way that people really can understand in sight and sound the point of view of the character that they are living, and I want to make it immersive. And if I will have the side to cut this bear attack in a cinematic way, fragmented way, to standardize it in the way the people is used to, then we will lose the nuances and how he survived, because that's what is really incredible, and survival is in the details. So I want the people to experience the whole thing,
But he literally throws you around, the bear does, like a doll.
Yes. I remember having the conversation with Alejandro, because you read in the script, okay, Hugh Glass fights the bear. I'm like, so how am I going to fight this bear? What am I going to do? Like, what kind of movements am I going to... What would a man do? Then you realize, oh yeah, it's not a fight. You're basically like a cat with a ball of yarn. You're being thrown around. Yes, I'm the yarn. So I essentially was the yarn. But what's groundbreaking, I think, about that sequence, and why I think so many people are talking about it, is it almost becomes virtual reality in a lot of ways. You feel very voyeuristic, like you're watching something you shouldn't be witnessing. And that's a testament to Alejandro and Chibo's masterful work as artists. They have a way of submerging you into this reality and making you almost feel the tension, the uncomfort. A lot of what is so powerful about that sequence is the moments of silence that they create. The silence between man and beast, and what's going to happen next. And I think that as the history of cinema unfolds, people are going to be talking about that sequence for a long period of time.
The interesting thing about the performance, your performance, is that you probably have said less in this movie.
Yeah.
Than most other movies you've done.
Right.
I mean, it is about expression. It is about pain. It is about all the things that you do with your eyes and your body. And
well, that was what was interesting for me as an actor from the onset, is how to push a narrative along without words. That's what was attractive, I think, from the onset. But it became about something different. When you're there, he set up a landscape for us that was so incredibly authentic. The people around us, the costumes, the actual locations that we were in. You do so much preparation beforehand, learning about the time period, reading fur trappers' journals, meeting men that were nostalgic about this period, that look at the mountain man as almost a spirituality. You do all this research, but once you get there and you're put in these conditions, it's just about trust, and it's about trusting the director you're working with and saying, how are we going to persevere? What are we going to do day to day? And you just kind of rely on instinct as an actor, and all that stuff, all that preparation, all the things you've thought about sort of dissolve away. And that's what this experience, I think, was for the entire cast, was, a trust within one another that we're going to do something, completely different cinematically.
That's exactly what you want, isn't it? In other words, all the preparation is there, but when the battle starts, when the action starts, you want them relying on instinct.
Yeah, the physicality of it. As Leo said, you have to surrender, and you have to be very humble with that, because one thing is to kind of have a conception how in bullfighting, how to stand in front of the bull, and so that once you are in front of that bull, you're like those guys in the tribune, like with the cigar, like, don't be a coward, get close. Once you are there, you have to know that, because there's no negotiation. You are really, really at the mercy of that. And it's a road movie. And yes, I didn't want this film to get into the standardized or generalized kind of generic kind of thing. I was looking too, not only in form and substance, in predictable way, which that's the way I like sometimes, not to frame things, but sometimes the substance start to get into unpredictable things that we couldn't have thought, that we learn. Sometimes we domain it, sometimes those things domain to us and defeat us, but that was the battle, and that was the film was about. So at the end product is an X-ray of the process we went through, with all the maybe weakness and strengths, but it's a work on process, because we never stop working with nature.
You shot this in natural light.
Yes.
Wow. So then you had to wait for 2 hours of available light.
Yeah, always when the sun came down is when we were shooting. And the reason, there was several reasons, but one of the reasons, obviously visually, we want this to be a painting, like a sonic painting. I want the people to submerge in a Caravaggio kind of thing, and the landscape.
Caravaggio thing, yeah.
But I think that is when the people will experience in this film those scenarios. We are not allowed to see it anymore, because we have, in a way, polluted planet Earth with so many advertising and cables and dams and things, that to look to those scenarios in the right time of the day is when God speaks, is when really things reveal themselves, and that's part of the cinematic experience, and that landscapes is what heals Hugh Glass, or kill him, or threaten him. So to shoot it in the right time was not only an aesthetical decision, but a production-wise decision, because in those long takes, if we will have shot at different times of the day, which we will never be allowed, because we travel 2 hours every day to get there, we will never finish, and it will never match.
You had a hard time finding a locale, didn't you? Because 5 years not there.
Yeah, we planned, there was more than 100 locations in 3 states and 3 different parts of the world, but every time you arrive, you prepare 3-4 months in advance, you rehearse, you choreograph, you plan everything, you do everything for those things to be there, and then suddenly you arrive and they are destroyed by blizzard, or there's no snow as you wanted. So it's all the time, again, you have to be moving around. Yeah, we struggle.
There's also cold. Mm-hmm. The river had to be cold.
Oh, they
didn't heat that river for you.
The entire production was cold
all the time.
New York is like Acapulco, I guess.
I hadn't been in the cold in a while. I got to New York yesterday, and I was like, wow, we did this every day for 9 months.
You have post-traumatic kind of thing.
Like my core temperature dropped. I was like, I had like flashbacks to the movie almost.
What was the most challenging part of this for you, other than the elements?
Oh, the challenging part was the endurance. It was just the endurance. I mean, the endurance that everyone, had to have every single day, because he set the bar so high from the onset. I mean, our opening sequence in this movie, I didn't even really understand what Alejandro was doing from the onset, but he wanted to put the audience in the mindset of each one of the lead characters in this long 15-minute tracking shot that is quite masterful, and almost took 3 to 4 weeks of rehearsal, because what Chivo and he achieve in that sequence is something. I mean, I keep on talking about the movies that they must have drawn upon, whether it be I Am Cuba, Treasure of the Sierra Madre, Sanjuro, Tarkovsky films, it's like Solaris, but they achieve this. They have this ability to get incredibly intimate with the characters, and then pan off to a landscape that's like an unbelievable David Lean shot, and then weave you like the cinematic snake in and out of the forest and into the mindsets of each one of these characters. I didn't really understand what was going on until I saw the final product, and then I realized, that's why we prepare for these things in such great detail. That's why it takes weeks and weeks of rehearsal.
What was it about him that made you be willing to give yourself over to him and trust him?
I've been a fan of his work for a long period of time, but it's the passion. It's the look. It was the look in his eyes from the onset of saying that he wanted to go into the heart of darkness, so to speak. He wanted to have that moment in nature. It was almost like he wanted to give himself over to something higher than him. It was almost a sort of spiritual voyage that I think he wanted to go on. And I knew, look, there's only so many times in your life you can be on a journey like that, and you want to put yourself in the hands of somebody that is going to strive for incredible authenticity. And that's what he did. I think that there's no sequence in this movie that I don't remember Alejandro looking at every single detail of what was in that frame. And that's what you want when you're working with a director, is to have them think of all of these things so you can concentrate on your job, you know. And he created this incredibly authentic atmosphere for us each and every day.
Some people have raised the idea that how could an actor in those circumstances concentrate on his acting? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because of the conditions.
Because of the conditions.
It forces you to concentrate. It forces you to concentrate on your acting,
yeah,
and be in the moment. You know. Granted, you have Chivo, the cinematographer, sometimes coming with the lens like this in your face, and you have to sort of, you know, edit that out. But it forces you into almost this primal state of being when you're out there for that long of a period of time. It just becomes about the basics. Yeah. It's really strange. All the esoteric existential things that you're thinking about, it becomes about just moving forward.
Yeah, Leo's forgetting one detail. The first time that I met him to offer the role, I just put the gun between us and then I said to him in the Mexican style, I said, "You accept this role?" And he did it. But no, it's true. What you were asking is true. It's all the rehearsal, Charlie, all the rehearsals. Once we were there, we knew that we had just one take, and the conditions were so thin. And I saw Leo, as you said, with no words, with every body part and every single little nuance in his eyes. No words. It's a show and tell film. No words.
This is a bit like, you know, the hangman's noose concentrates, focuses on the,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Makes you concentrate.
Yeah, you have to be aware. You have to be present. And I saw Leo doing things with nuances and with rehearsals, movements millimetrically there. But then at the same time reacting to birds that sings or moves or things that were happening there. And I think it's because, honestly, the awareness that technique gave you is the awareness that you will be making a ridicule in front of millions of people, because it's what actors feels in the opening Broadway show. They are exposed live for the first time and only, and that's it.
It was interesting for us as actors too. I think a lot of us had to adjust to the process of finding our performance within very specific shot structures from the onset. But it became something entirely different. It became a completely unique process for all of us, because it was like live theater every single day, and that tension of having to achieve that hour and a half every single day is infused into the actual movie. You feel that tension. I mean, so it was like, yeah. I mean, we were high octane every single day that we were making this movie, because if not, we'd have to show up the next day and keep being in these far off locations that were hours and hours and hours away from, you know.
Next time that you're on a green screen, you will be suffering. You will be asking for your snow to be there. Please freeze the set.
Just a note about the cinematographer. Someone you like and work with, and also work with you on Birdman.
Chivo. He's unbearable. I don't like him. He's very... No, he's a brother, and he's a true artist. He's really one of those guys that not only is ahead of his time technically, he is in the craft. He is just a master of light. But he is just a partner in crime, and a visionary and sensitive artist like nobody else. And we share this kind of excitement of this period. And you know, you renovate or die. That's my theory as an artist, and always like to be renovating and trying things, even knowing that we can fail horribly. But success is to fail and then try again, and we are trying all the time, knowing, laughing that we can fail. But even mistakes that we found in the way, we love it because they said, well, maybe there's something nice about there is no lotus without moth, there is no like beauty without there is no light without darkness. So when we found those kind of territories, we love it, and we share that enthusiastic thing, to try those things.
In the end, what is it about a Hugh Glass, this true story made into a book, that enabled him to persevere? What is that X factor?
It's a tough thing to answer, but certainly seeing this movie and seeing these characters up on screen, you're amazed at the perseverance of life, the adaptability of life on Earth. I don't know, this movie took on a whole bunch of other meanings for me as we were making it. I think things that I couldn't have even foreseen from the onset. So many of the conversations that we had about, this time period, the first surge out west, this capitalistic surge to extract the resources and from the lands, kill these animals and send them off to Europe. And here you have these Native American populations, their culture is decimated in the process. There was an environmental undertone to all of it there for me too. I think it's all Hugh Glass's stories about man surviving the savagery of nature, being able to conquer nature or adapt to it, and the will to live, but it took on all these other meanings. And then especially going to places like the Canadian tar sands and some of the environmental work that I did, seeing how we're systematically destroying these places, indigenous cultures, forest lands, our planet on an unprecedented scale in human history. And we think we've learned so much from the past. We think we've learned so much from the mistakes of people in history. But here we are at this day and age, doing things on a grander scale than ever before. Not to mention the fact that we were shooting a film where we felt with the onset of climate change hit, 2015 being one of the hottest years in recorded history. We're seeing firsthand so many climactic changes that we had to change locations to the southern tip of Argentina just to find snow. And here we are today seeing unprecedented weather events all over the world. So this movie I was simultaneously doing a documentary about climate change. I've been interviewing, dozens and dozens of scientists and thinkers and politicians all over the world, and I was doing a film about climate change while I was doing this movie. And to see it firsthand like this was it's going to be an unforgettable moment in my life, because this is the turning point. Yeah, there's a turning point.
This is you speaking at the climate change conference in Paris in December.
Good segue.
Roll tape.
And a year which has been the hottest in recorded history. It is hard to understand how some still refuse to accept the reality of climate change. Every year that we allow their refusal to hold the world back from making progress is another year gone. Precious days, weeks, months, and years wasted on inaction. But today is different. Across the globe, people of all communities are demanding change, marching and raising their voices to say enough is enough, we must act, and we must all act now. Our world leaders have come to Paris constricted by politics, the individual needs of their constituencies, but we need to leave here liberated by their humanity and emboldened by their sense of stewardship to our planet. They have a choice. Be timid and stop at an agreement that merely allows them to save face, or they can lead. They can return to their own towns and cities with a real plan to save the planet. And it is these cities that the change must start.
You suggested and you have in that speech talked that we can meet the energy demands with clean, renewable energy by 2050.
Yeah, but
if we start now.
But the United States needs to lead the way.
Did they, in fact?
Well, look, I mean, these agreements are for all future emissions. Okay, we're talking about a scale of carbon that's been emitted into the atmosphere that's, again, unprecedented in human history, and the climate is reacting accordingly. There's been carbon emissions and there's been temperatures throughout recorded history, and now we're here. Okay? So it's been this grand puzzle that's been incredibly difficult to figure out, but one thing is crystal clear, and that is that the United States plays one of the most major roles in the entire world, and had they not come to the table, had the world community not come to the table at this conference, the environmental movement and the climate movement would be dead. There needed to be some sort of progress because each one of these climate summits have failed miserably. And for the first time, the world community is taking it seriously. The big question is, are we too late? That's been the pondering question for everyone. I know we should all remain optimistic, and I want to remain optimistic.
But you were worried that we are too late, that somehow we've done so much damage we can
That's
never...
in somebody else. The answer to that is in somebody else's hands, but we do know that the scientific community has been screaming out loud for decades, and other interests have stifled their voice and manipulated this conversation, and it's a real shame. But one thing I'm proud of, that for the first time, we've seen the world community take this issue seriously. And if they hadn't, there would be absolutely no hope. We can't wait another 4 years for people to start to listen to 99% of the scientific community. I mean, it's an absurdity, and it's not about the individual anymore. It's about we. It's about we as a species, as a world community, finally coming together to make some sort of progress forward. Whether we're too late or not remains to be seen, but I'm just very happy as an environmentalist to see something happen in the right direction.
Something that I was laughing that when I was reading the news in this climate thing, that the politicians were discussing about negotiating with nature, right? Like, well, 2 degrees, no, 2.5 degrees. Well, in 2035 will be 2 degrees, as if they can control the planet Earth system. And we experienced the difference between 1 degree and another, and it's the difference between ice and water. And when that degree fails,
sea level.
Yeah, no, but we were supposed to be shooting in one location. That suddenly shooting the Revenant, the difference between 1 degree and another is ice of water. And when the ice become water, they destroy the whole thing. And I saw that. So, and when they said, well, 2 degrees is acceptable, I said, really? It's acceptable? 2 degrees? I said, take a look, experience 1 degree of change. And you will then talk about that if you negotiate 2 degrees or not. So, what I'm saying is the notion of the climate change is one, but to experience it, and the people as Leo or Obama or all the people that scientists that are traveling to these places to experience that is a very different thing than reading in the news or just be having statistics as these politicians.
In your personal portfolio, you're engaged in disinvestment now too, aren't you?
Yes.
And recommending.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important. Like I said, simultaneously, I was doing a documentary about climate change, and I hope to have it released next year. But I mean, look, we could talk about this till we're blue in the face. It is the most existential human crisis that the world has ever known, in my opinion. I think that it is the biggest problem that mankind has ever had to face. We're not talking about something that is going to change in a decade or not.
And as many have said, a threat to our national security.
Yeah, and it's going to change. It's something that will quite possibly change this planet for tens of thousands, if not millions of years. And, we're all at this point hoping for some sort of miracle.
The generation will say, why didn't you do more?
Absolutely.
So people should go to The Revenant and read Naomi Klein's This Changed Everything. And then that's it.
The interesting thing, you've done a lot of documentaries. You've done, the last time you were here, we talked about a documentary. I've forgotten the subject. What was it?
I have that Virunga. I think
that was Virunga.
We talked about Virunga, and I have another one called Cowspiracy. Yeah. Both of them. I'm just kind of focusing on environmental documentaries at this point. That's it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir. Always great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend.
It's great to see you again.
Thank you very much.
The film opens this weekend on Friday.
Yes.
Much success.
Thank you very much.